Now, I'm going to take you through a journey. And it's going to start by going downstairs here. And it's going to be an interesting journey. There's just a lot to see down here. Especially if I turn the light on. Right, with that being done, to this direction is a gun pit. Here's the fun part. This direction is another gun pit. I am in hell, and it is an amazing place. These are gun positions that was built right after the Cold War, because the Polish, by the way, this is a small munition store. And the next gun pit. The Polish were actually operating coastal defense guns all the way up to the early 70s. 4 of these very large positions, further inland here, were built right before the Second World War broke out. And these 4, both 150 centimeter guns, 150 millimeter guns, were operating not in here. This is only a 100 millimeter cannon, 10 centimeter gun. The big guns that were further back here, they were built by the Poles and operated in 1939 when the Germans attacked. And the Germans were so worried about these 4 guns because they couldn't quite see them. And they were actually they were keeping the German ships at bay from getting into the harbor of Danzig. And the ship that was the Schleswig-Holstein that had come in before the war and was shelling initially the fort at Westerplatte, pulled back out of the harbor in order to start fighting this defense area, because this was full of Polish military. And a lot more, although fewer people, but a lot more resistance than the Germans had initially envisioned. And those 15 centimeter guns actually hit the Schleswig-Holstein and were firing at her sister ship as well. And all of the gun positions were intact. So that's one interesting thing about the Battle of Hel, the Hel Peninsula here in Poland, that you don't know. You've all heard about the heroic Polish last stand of the Postal Office and of Westerplatte. But here on Hel Peninsula was really where things, I can't even explain to you. The Polish held the Hel Peninsula for 32 days. It was the last place to give up fighting of the Battle of Poland, and the Germans never took it. There was 400 some, shall we call them, border guards, border troops, that was fighting for this peninsula, and they kept the Germans bottled up at the very far end, despite the island here, or the peninsula here, being shelled from the sea and bombed by the Luftwaffe. Didn't make any difference. The Polish actually were so successful in keeping the Germans bottled up at the peninsula that they never even got to the Polish defensive line at Hel. They kept them that far away. Anyway, we fast forward to 1945. The Germans were again bottled up here, now with the Russians on the outside of the peninsula. And they just sat there because they knew it's really hard to cross a 500-600 meter narrow strait in the peninsula with a lot of hard, well-trained, well-defending troops. So they sat there waiting for the Germans to surrender, which they eventually did. And after that, the Polish built coastal fortifications. And these are the coastal fortifications the Polish built here. There's a number of these gun pits, 10 centimeter guns. They were operated until 73. And this is parts of them, which is actually quite cool. And they're all interconnected by a tunnel link, which is even more cool. And, all right, I'm going to sit down here. And there's some other, what the hell was that flying thing? Anyway, I'm just going to give you a little quick of the trip off here. Let's see if we can go this way. We'll go the other way. Anyway, one thing I wanted to ask you guys about was I'm not entirely sure. I kept thinking, well, these are not to hold shells. Could they be to hold spare barrels? And then that dawned on me, that can't be, because, well, it's still a 10 centimeter barrel. You're not going to unscrew that from the cannon. Besides, it's not like it's a flat gun, so there wouldn't be a spare. So I actually don't know what is held in here. Well, anyway, one of those things. Of course, you have the magazines that are located in here, in the actual gun pit. And then, well, let's go on to the next one. And this is actually, they built an enormous amount of infrastructure here on Hell. And I really cannot wait to show you guys all of it. Because it all started in 1935 with the Polish built here. They started building fortifications, bunkers. They had a military harbor, they still do. There's a lot of military represented here today as well. But back in 35, they built a harbor and secured it. There's a lot of military here, and this was to protect the Polish fleet. And so here, you actually have one of the steel doors for the munition store in there. There's stores here for the guns. There's some up in the stores up in the gun pit, and then there are bunkers in the woods as well. And I said there's at least 5 of these we can walk through and visit. I'm not going to do all of it and tie it all together for you. And here's the next one. There's more of the steel doors here that are still in place. And they also, so of course, then the Germans came along, and eventually they took the Hell Peninsula in a very long drawn-out battle. And then they built 3 huge gun pits for the large guns that would eventually be placed in the Lademan out in France, out in Calais, in the big bunker pits there. But they were tested here. The biggest guns of the Second World War, they were all built and placed here, these huge round casemates. And then they were moved to France, to Lindemann, I'm sorry, I said Lademan, the Lindemann battery. And that's where they then was placed. But then the gun pits here, well, they sat pretty idle. Here's the only wall, you can't get through, so this is the way. So the big guns started here. So the Germans had these big gun pits here, didn't do much with them. The Polish didn't do much with them either, but they built a lot. And one of the things after the war, they used the German fortification, they used the German rangefinder precision, some of their bunkers, and also some of the Polish pre-World War II bunkers did they use. So to continue to construct and build for the Cold War, full gas-tight nuclear-proof bunkers, big, huge steel doors, and all that infrastructure. Build it different than the Russians did, and I'm going to show you a lot of those. Lots of Cold War stuff coming up in this particular year, I'll tell you that. And what they built, including on top of the German rangefinders, and there are 2 German rangefinders here that are still in place, and I found them both. And the Polish built complexes into, and they utilized all of it. But I've been here for a while, and I cannot even begin to tell you how amazing this place is. The Polish military kept the entire peninsula for decades after the Second World War, and you can tell that this was a military construction. A lot of the housing looks pretty much like military housing. You sort of get the feel, and you can take these nice trips through the woods, and they make nice little walks, and there's full of bunkers, and there's so much stuff. You find gas masks, you'll find all sorts of things laying throughout the woods. So I can only tell you, we are going to do a Poland tour. I'm piecing together on this trip the tours to Poland. Here's the modern radar coastal tower. So there, like I said, there's a lot of official stuff that you sort of walk around that is still in use. Lots of observation towers, and I think we have a bunker coming up right up there. But lots of trenches, a lot of single-man shelters. There's just no shortage as to what was here. And it truly is an interesting place that we have to visit. This is one of the shelters from before the war. Was the crew shelter. There's a shelter for the crews from the generator. I've been in there, don't worry, they showed me everything. And here's the ventilation for it and the emergency exit for it. And so we got to show you something that's really, really cool. And I'm not just saying it because I have a lasting memory of the tragedy of trying to film it with my drone, and it went rogue on me, took off to sea, head straight for Moscow, decided to attack Russia on its own, and a few minutes ago my drone was last seen barreling over the Gdansk Sea towards Kaliningrad, and it crashed into the ocean, presumably with all hands lost. But here's the observation tower that is also really cool inside. Had Zeiss optics. Of course, it was built after the war. This is a Cold War, since the Poles here had 130 centimeter guns. The Bofors guns they had went away after the war and were replaced with 130 millimeter Russian coastal guns. But look at this thing. And it is that kind of cool, right? And it is. And you have down here a post-war nuclear proof shelter. Also been inside of that. And I just like this behemoth here. It's just kind of cool. I mean, you can't say it's not. But just give you a little taste. Oh, and of course the 130 millimeter guns that are sitting over here. I can't really show you. Well, I think I can, but I'm not going to, because I just want to give you a little walkthrough of the area and see how dense it is. Not how dense I am for flying a drone in, you know, force gale wind. Yeah, I feel a little bit like an idiot. What the hell is that? And walking through here, I keep finding things I don't know what is, or I haven't seen, because there's just so much, and it is everywhere. Truly, there's stuff everywhere. Bunkers, one-man positions, shelters, cannon positions. I found some cannon positions that I'm not entirely clear if they were built before or after the war, with huge underground complexes. And they're just, it's amazing. And honestly, I don't know what this is. It's not on my map. I didn't see it before. This looks like what you would expect from a fire hose. Alright, now we're learning together. Actually, don't know what this is, but it is weatherproofed. And what is it? Could be a ventilation, could be an emergency exit, well, it's full of trash, could be a water tower. I think this is a water tank, maybe, since it's full of bunkers and stuff in this area, so highly possible. And there's an ungodly amount of tourists here, despite the fact that the weather has been absolutely atrocious. Well, hey, it is what it is. But I've gotten used to filming in the rain, let's put it that way. Yeah, here's another one of the new observation towers up here. And see right here is another little bunker museum. Some of these are in private hands, and they put nice little museums full of displays and little stuff. The guy in here to my left, he have the aluminum lid of a Russian missile silo, and I have no idea how he got it, because my Polish still sucks. So here's the other observation tower, and what's interesting about this one, despite the fact that there's people crawling all over it, as you see, this is a tourist area. This is where everybody goes to be on vacation, be on holiday. The Polish president has a house down here, which of course means that more places were closed off that I couldn't go to, where there's Polish pre-war shelters. And it is what it is. But let me show you something really neat about this particular place. If you can actually see what it is I'm going to show you. Because this was not built on a Polish foundation. This was built on a German foundation. This was built, if you recognize this, you may or may not, This was built on an old German radar foundation because the Germans had put up a huge radar tower here on this, and the Poles built upon that afterwards. This little tower, which is, you know, again, interesting. It's an interesting construction, let's go with that. It is kind of cool. It is a little, I don't know, Star Wars kind of thing. But this was the German foundation for the radar that they stuck this on. And I can't quite figure out why there would be what looks like an emergency exit. Again, it's full of stuff and trash, because there's no underground into it, except, well, there's in here a small little room in here. You can't crawl up or down, which is why that's open. Most of the bunkers here are open, I will say, until you can go through most of it. And some of the stuff they covered up or closed, well, they didn't really keep it closed. There's people of inquisitive natures, let's put it that way, have nicely opened them up. And you can go through most of them. But there's a long walkway. Nothing is next to each other, especially when you get into the forest. There's a lot of them, they put up nice signs and foundation. They put up little signs with them and everything, which is kind of cool. So you can actually see, like this guy over here, you can see what he did with the bunker over here. They put up a nice little sign to see what this was, what kind of shelter. This is post-war shelter, and he has a little museum in here. But again, nuclear-proof shelter for 6 men down here. And then you start down here, you have one of this whole area was enclosed by one-man shelters. And let's take a look at this, give people a chance to walk away, because I'm just filming this for you guys because I want to show you something cool. And you'll see everywhere trenches have been built by these prefabs. And there's a lot of trenches. I have spent a lot of time in Polish Cold War bunkers that are actually really cool. Again, different from the Russians. I'll show you all of them, and including the way the Russians built the Stalin bunkers. And that sort of gives you an idea of how the Stalin line bunkers turned into the Cold War shelters of the Russians, again with prefab parts. The Polish somewhat emulated that, but not in the same way at all. These little mushrooms here you'll see everywhere in the area. These little one-man shelters, guard posts. So we have an artillery regiment here. In here, the coastal defense 130 was in here, Polish coastal defense. So you had the whole area is or was surrounded by these little one-man shelters that was covered up, and you have the back door here, and that's pretty much all of it. So anyway, there's some really interesting, more towers, more bunkers, lots to show you, just give you an idea of what's coming. And remember, the Second World War did not just happen in the West. 80% of it took place out here and after. See you soon.